Welcome to a demonstration of the Semantic Tracker, a forthcoming application of the Buddhist Translators Workbench. We are still far from developing a user interface, so please note that the following mock-ups are meant only to illustrate the concept of the Semantic Tracker and may not reflect the final product. The Semantic Tracker can be used to study words in virtually any language. In this video, we will simulate using it to analyze and translate a cluster of Sanskrit words in Buddhist literature. In particular, we will compare the uses of the verbs clip and v-clip. We will first collect and annotate a set of passages illustrating the use of these words in context. We will call these passages citations. We will then use our annotations to generate semantic comparisons and data visualizations. Let's imagine that we are translating a Buddhist text that frequently employs the verb clip and its etymologically and semantically related verbs v-clip and pari-clip, and we want to investigate the difference between them. Our preliminary research shows that sometimes they are used interchangeably or are listed together without any explicit indication of their meaning. Or perhaps one verb is used to gloss the other in a commentary, and we need to determine whether the commentary is introducing a new concept or simply paraphrasing its source. To translate these words successfully, we first must determine how they differ from each other in Sanskrit, and then find English renderings that capture their differences and similarities, or perhaps one that retains their vagueness. How can the Semantic Tracker help us? First, we create a private account within BTW to use this tool. Once we have accessed the Semantic Tracker, we need to tell the software which language we are working in and the primary focus of our investigation. In this demo, we want to work with Sanskrit and research the verb clip. We also want to study how v-clip and pari-clip are used. In order to spot semantic differences among this set of verbs, we may also wish to explore the nominal forms kalpana, vikalpa, and parikalpa. Perhaps we also want to take into account Tibetan translations. In that case, we can add Tibetan as another language and include additional words. However, we will not demonstrate this kind of multilingual research in this video. Now that we are clear on the focus of our research, we start collecting citations that illustrate how our words are used in Sanskrit. To this end, we search the texts we want to draw on. For instance, we could query our favorite digitized library of Buddhist Sanskrit literature to find examples of the use of clip and the words you want to compare with it. When we find a citation that we want to use in our study, we can input it into BTW and assign metadata to it. In this way, we gradually create a personal database of citations for our research. Once we have collected and assigned metadata to the citations that we want to study, the tracker organizes them into collections. Let's open the collection that contains the citations for the verb clip in sutras. From here, we can start annotating. Let's have a look at the first citation. Here, the meaning of clip is determined by its object shayam, as the phrase shayam kalpayati means to lie down. To record this information, we need first to mark the syntactic roles of shayam and kalpayati, and then proceed to annotate the meaning of clip in this passage. All of our semantic annotations are based on the conceptual categories of the historical thesaurus of English. Let's pause for a moment and look at this resource. Like any thesaurus, the historical thesaurus of English lists words by the concepts they express. What makes it unique are its scale and the level of specificity of its conceptual categorization. The historical thesaurus of English arranges all the words contained in the Oxford English Dictionary in a fine-grained conceptual taxonomy that ranges from very general semantic fields such as the world, the mind, and society, to increasingly specific semantic categories. For example, inside the field the world, we find 17 categories, including matter. Inside matter, we find further headings such as color. And inside color, several categories related to pigmentation and chromatic concepts, including the names of the colors, like white, black, red, etc. We can even explore further subcategories inside the field white and retrieve concepts such as whitishness, brilliant whiteness, silveriness, etc., containing words like milkiness, or ivory. The semantic tracker uses the categories of the historical thesaurus of English to annotate the meaning of words in our citations. Of course, words take up different semantic nuances depending on their contexts, and the historical thesaurus of English can only offer an abstracted representation of their meaning. This is why the semantic tracker offers the possibility of customizing the categories of the historical thesaurus of English to capture the various shades of meaning that words acquire in different contexts. Let's return to our example and see how we can use the categories of the historical thesaurus of English in BTW to represent the meaning of clip in our citation. We have already pointed out that in this passage, clip takes Shyam as its object and has the overall meaning of lying down. Let's open the Semantic Field Workbench and search for a semantic category to represent this meaning. From this workspace, we can query the historical thesaurus of English and view a map of its conceptual taxonomy. Let's start by searching the thesaurus for fields that contain the English words lie down or recline. Our search returns 16 results. We need to choose those that better fit the meaning of clip in our citation. Our passage is about the Buddha, so we should probably discard semantic categories that involve going to bed, abandoning an attempt, or being lazy. Rather, we will most likely choose place hold body in a relaxed posture, on upon something, and have specific position arrangement, lie down, recline. Both of these semantic fields seem to closely fit the meaning of kalpayati in this citation, so let's add it to a list of potential candidates. To review the list, we go back to the annotation panel of our citation. If we decide that we indeed want to assign the second semantic field to kalpayati, we select it. The semantic annotation of clip in this sentence has been relatively easy, for two reasons. First, the context clearly spells out the meaning of the verb. And second, clip here has a straightforward equivalent in English, to lie down. Our next citation, however, proves more challenging. Here, the context does not yield an obvious rendering. In this citation, kalpayanti occurs with vikalpayanti. Neither verb takes an object, and their meanings remain vague. To study this passage, let's start by noting the relationship between kalpayanti and vikalpayanti. We select listed with and link it to vikalpayanti. Let's imagine that we have already semantically marked up kalpayanti and proceed to annotate vikalpayanti. We open the Semantic Field Workbench and search for semantic categories that fit the meaning of kalpayanti in this passage. Let's start by searching for some possible meanings of viclip, or the lemmatized form of vikalpayanti, such as conceptualize, discriminate, or categorize. We get 8 results, including form judgment, discriminate, and judge determine, discern, recognize as different. These seem to be good fits, so let's add them to our list for later review. Perhaps perceive, conceive form in the mind is a good candidate to describe the meaning of viclip in our passage, but we are not sure. Let's explore it further to see the words it includes in its specific position in the conceptual taxonomy. Here we see that in the thesaurus, this category is sandwiched between intuition and imagination, and includes words such as think, suppose, form, etc. We also note that we have already used this category to annotate the verb clip. At this point, we may want to differentiate viclip from clip. We may argue, for instance, that viclip denotes a specific aspect of conceive, form in the mind, that is, a form of mental categorization. The historical thesaurus of English does not have a semantic field that describes this form of mental activity, but this is not a problem. With the semantic tracker, we can create a custom category to represent this meaning. We do so by combining conceive, form in the mind with arrange by kind, categorize. We can find our newly created category in My Fields. From here, we add it to our list and return to our citation. We may decide that form judgment, discern, discriminate, and our customized field capture the meaning of our word. However, we really do not have enough context to be certain about the specific semantic nuance of vclip here. It is good practice, then, to mark these semantic fields as uncertain. Uncertainty takes many forms. In our case, it is due to vagueness, and we select the corresponding option. Now let's move along to a point where we have completed our annotations. How can they help us in our translation and lexical study? Let's return to the citation we have just marked up. All the highlighted words contain annotations. Aside from our usual verbs clip and vclip, the adjective kalpika is also highlighted. This passage revolves around a wordplay between the words kalpayanti, vikalpayanti, and kalpikaha. This pun poses a challenge to translators, as it hinges on a phonetic similarity that is difficult to recreate in English. Let's see how the semantic tracker can help us work on an English rendition of this pun. First, we use our workbench to see which semantic fields we have assigned to the words. Here we find categories pertaining to the sphere of the mind for the verbs kalpayanti and vikalpayanti, and categories pertaining to the fields of propriety, decorum, and morality for the adjective kalpikaha. To successfully render the pun, we need to find an English word that matches as many of these fields as possible. Here's where the English words listed in the historical thesaurus are especially useful. Let's select all of our semantic categories and retrieve the words that the historical thesaurus assigns to them, and find which words match multiple semantic fields. Among them, form occurs most frequently and occurs in both the semantic categories pertaining to the mind and those pertaining to decorum. This suggests that the word form could be a useful point of departure for crafting a translation of the Sanskrit pun. Of course, form has many senses in English. This is why it occurs in the majority of our semantic fields. We may want to compare the semantic spectrum of the English word form with the Sanskrit verb clip to make sure we did not introduce unwanted shades of meaning in our translation. We can do so by generating a semantic comparison chart with form. Here, we see the semantic fields pertaining to form highlighted in yellow. Let's then add the fields that pertain to clip. Here, they are displayed in blue. The green highlighting indicate fields shared by both form and clip. We can see that there is some significant overlap between the two words. We can then proceed and use the word form in our translation. For example, following Luis Gomez's lead, we could translate the pun by rendering clip and vclip with to form notions and conceptualizations, and kalpika with proper form. The same comparative feature can be applied to Sanskrit words. We can compare semantic spectra of two Sanskrit words, or use our linguistic annotations for more sophisticated comparisons. For example, we can compare the semantic fields of the objects of clip and vclip. Let's go to our linguistic comparison tool and select clip and vclip. If we want to compare the objects these verbs take, we select object patient. On the basis of our annotations, we can see that both verbs govern objects pertaining to the sphere of idea, notion, concept, but only clip takes relative positions as its object. If we wish to view the citations this information comes from, we can click and see the associated passage. On the basis of our annotations, we can also generate data visualizations. The semantic tracker offers a range of infographics to display the data extracted from our annotations. Depending on the desired level of granularity, we may want to choose a bar chart, sunburst chart, semantic field cloud, or network map. Let's assume we are interested to see whether there is a noticeable variation in the use of clip in different texts or types of literature, for example, in sutras or shastras. To this end, we can choose a bar chart to display the distribution of meanings of clip across source types and texts. To select which variables to include, we use the tool's menu. Let's choose to visualize the frequency of the meanings that the verb clip expresses in all of our texts, and add the option of filtering by source type. Let's generate the visualization. Here, we can see that in the Abhidharmakosha, a philosophical treatise, which is displayed in dark blue, clip takes up meanings ranging from interaction with the material world in the sense of creating, arranging, or assuming a position, to aspects of intellectual activity such as accepting as true and regarding. Now let's visualize the distribution of the meanings of clip by source type. Here, blue represents Shastra, orange represents literature, and green represents sutra. We can see that the meaning of accepting as true is used in Shastra literature, unsurprising as this meaning is typically associated with argumentation. If we want to narrow the comparison to just two texts, we may want to choose the sunburst chart. For example, let's compare the uses of Vikalpa in our texts, the Abhidharma Kosha and Bodhisattva Bhumi. Let's generate the visualization. In this chart, we can see in yellow the semantic categories that Vikalpa expresses in the Abhidharma Kosha, and in blue, those that it expresses in the Bodhisattva Bhumi. The fields in green correspond to the meanings shared between the two texts. So far, we have visualized only the meanings of words in texts. If we want to visualize more complex relations between words and the surrounding text, we can generate network maps. Network maps can show syntactic relationships as well as semantic shifts between the meaning a word has in a source text and the way it is used in commentaries. Examples of interactive network maps are provided on our website. PTW is a work in progress, and many of the features we have demonstrated here have yet to be implemented. We would be grateful if you could take the time to offer us feedback so that we may develop a resource that matches your translation and research needs. Thank you for your attention and support.